the diversity, equity, and inclusion is and continues to be a very strong element and element for organizations that are beneficial for them. Unfortunately, there's a lot of heated rhetoric about diversity, equity, inclusion, I guess, being perceived as reverse discrimination, which we fundamentally disagree with that assertion. It is failing to sort of readdress the facts that diversity, equity, inclusion has actually benefited the United States economy over the years, but it just has to be focused properly in order for that to happen.
How do we do that? How is it focused properly, and what are the steps that need to be taken now?
The steps should be that diversity, equity, inclusion should be considered the impetus behind superior business performance, increased access and opportunity for development for all people, and that focusing on building corporate culture to increase and enhance the engagement of as many employees as possible is what diversity, equity, and inclusion means. It doesn't mean lowering standards. So if it's applied as the significant contributor to the business driver that it is, then it will be strategically relevant in the organizations and less concerned as something that is being merely tolerated.
So, I mean, give us a sense how you think about this, Mike, and how your council thinks about this, because again, it seems like DEI is sharing a similar type of situation or environment as ESG is, environmental social governance investing, is people are just kind of pushing back on both of those types of initiatives, whether it's from a political perspective or a business perspective. How do you think about that?
Well, it's unfortunate that that's been the case. We're focusing on, organizations need to be, and shareholders and customers are expecting, and employees are expecting companies to be peak performers. And specifically the ELC, we are corporate officers that are executives in major corporations around the world. So we look at the diversity, equity, inclusion as a piece of increasing the effectiveness of an organization's ability to be more profitable and be more successful, as how we would suggest organizations focus on it, as opposed to it being something that's perceived as a political issue.
What do you think would be helpful, Mike? Because to not politicize it just a few months before an election that will definitely politicize this, how do you sort of manage that?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and I guess the challenge of the day. Our assessment on managing it is staying focused on what is required to be functional on the ground in organizations, and to be less, I guess, less defined by other people's assessment about what it is or it isn't. That's the only way we think is the best, I guess the best avenue is to be consistent for addressing what I call disparities in terms of numbers based on representation of talent within organizations, and to have talent strategies and development strategies that ensure that everybody is reaching their full potential in organizations as our suggestions for what organizations ought to do, and to stay focused on that independent of what it's called or independent of what the acronyms are that people are defining it by.
Mike, you mentioned that the ELC is a global council, global entity. Given your global view here, how is the U.S. doing on DEI initiatives, maybe versus some other parts of the world?
I think it is mixed relative to other parts of the world, but I do believe that the focus on productivity and team benefits globally is much more pronounced, and it's less defined by race and culture, and so it has less baggage, I guess, if you will, relative to how it's perceived globally than it does here in the United States. I think team productivity, maximizing the contributions of all types of folks, independent of their background or gender or sexual orientation, continues to be something that all organizations are striving towards. There are some companies who are more effective at it globally than others, but I just think the whole issue around the discussion that you all are referencing is primarily much more, I guess, aggressive in the United States, because I think there is an over interpretation of this as a byproduct of a racial issue, as opposed to something that is looked at as a full production of all types of people, independent of race, in the United States.